Welcome to a special groove session from Behavioral Grooves, the podcast that explores the mysteries of the human condition with a behavioral science lens. I'm Kurt Nelson.
And I'm Tim Houlihan. This is part one of a two-part series on habits and routines. Now, in these two episodes, we're going to cover a lot of things about habits and routines. Kurt and I are going to just do some riffing, but we're also going to talk about some research and get into sort of the more specific things that will hopefully help you turn habits and routines into things you can find your groove with. Some of the things we're going to cover in both of these are going to be the impact on our lives, how we can start habits, how we can stop habits, some examples of good and bad habit generation, right? And we're going to talk about some of the science that goes behind this as well.
Yeah. And so in this episode, we're going to focus on defining what habits and routines are. Hell, we'll even throw in rituals as an added bonus on this. Rituals. Yes, we have to say rituals in that tone. All right. Okay. So we'll talk about where habits come from, how they fit into our lives, and what we can do to create a new habit.
Because it matters. Like starting new habits is something that's really important in our lives. We need to know how to do it intentionally.
Yeah, let's start a new habit or a routine and all those things.
Also, I want to say that in these grooving sessions, Kurt and I are picking topics that we're fond of. But if you have a topic that you would like for us to discuss, for us to groove on, let us know. Shoot us a note. Send us a carrier pigeon, get the word to us and we will figure something out. And we would love to groove on ideas that are important to you. Was the carrier pigeon a little too much?
Well, I'm thinking, aren't carrier pigeons extinct? I mean, I think we killed off the carrier pigeons, didn't we? I don't remember. I'm probably way off.
Might have.
But, there you go. Smoke signals. How about that? Oh, telegraph, dot, dash, dot. I don't know.
That's Morse code. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. We got to get going on habits and routines and rituals. So let's start. Let's start with the definition, Tim. What's a definition that we can bring to our listeners around a habit? Because what is it?
That's a really good question, and there are several ways of looking at what actually defines a habit. So let's start with what the American Heritage Dictionary has to say.
Oh, dictionaries. Love them. Yes.
I love dictionaries because
I used to read a dictionary as a kid. I think that probably shared too much about, oh my God. Yeah. Didn't you read the dictionary?
Yes, but I thought I was maybe the only one. But
maybe that's why we like each other so much.
Oh God.
We were one of those nerdy kids that read the dictionary. Anyway, sorry, we digress.
The American Heritage Dictionary says that a habit is a recurrent, often unconscious pattern of behavior that is acquired through frequent repetition, right? It's an established disposition of the mind or character. And or it could be considered a customary manner or practice. Now, this is the dictionary, but I think this is not a psychological thing, right? But I do think that they're hitting on a couple of important factors here. That when we think about habit, there is an unconsciousness about it, and there's frequency.
Yeah,
those are two important elements to think about. But there are other ways, maybe better ways. And Charles Duhigg, the great science communicator, wrote a book, The Power of Habit: Why We Do What We Do in Life and Business, and he has a definition.
Yeah. So Charles' definition really it defines a habit as a neurological loop, one that governs any type of repetitive behavior. And that loop really consists of three primary components. So he starts with the cue. It's this trigger that tells your brain to go into its automatic mode. That is the start of your habit. So the cue could be anything that sets it off. It could be a time of day, could be an emotional state, could be a specific location. It could be a ding on your phone that says you got a text, and so
Oh, sorry, I got to get
automatically,
this. Yeah.
yeah, automatically you go to that, right? So the cue sets off what he then calls the routine, which is basically the behavior, um,
Yes.
that is the part that is the habit, right? So this is the, it can be physical, but it can also be mental or emotional. It can, if we think about this, that action then is taken in response to the cue. And what Charles brings in is a really interesting part, which is that this all gets reinforced, that this is it becomes a habit because you get a cue, you do a routine, and you get a reward for doing that routine. And thus it
Hmm.
reinforces this into your brain. Now, after a while, when it becomes habitual and automatic, the reward is less important, I believe, from the way that Charles looks at it. But that's, again, we're getting way down in the nuances because, as we think about this, I think there's some really interesting pieces about the cue, the routine, and the reward, which is slightly different than some of the other researchers who look at this, and Wendy Wood being one of those. So, Tim, you want to talk about how Wendy looks at this?
Yeah, Wendy is a researcher at UCLA, and who we love her work, and she's been a guest in the past. And she says that habits are behaviors that are repeated regularly and tend to occur automatically in response to specific cues or context. So she actually focuses on the automaticity and the repetition, and not so much on the reward as Duhigg does.
Right.
Her whole thing is really about habits become habits because of the automatic nature that they go from being conscious to unconscious and through repetition.
Right. So the definition similar, right? In
Yeah.
this, in all of these, there is this unconscious automatic response aspect of it. There
Yes.
is a component of being triggered or a cue, right? There is something there. I think there is slightly difference in, like, the definition. Does it need to have a reward, or is it a habit even if you don't have a reward? And I think Charles is probably more on the line of how habits form as opposed to what habits are, where Wendy is going with this. And so, the again, definitions are nuanced as we look at this. What it isn't, though, a habit isn't muscle memory. It's not the idea that I am know my fingers know where to go on a keyboard, right? I mean, probably if you got really specific on the the definition, maybe you could fit that in there, but that's not really what we're talking about. We're talking about the, as I mentioned before, a ding on my phone, and I unconsciously reach for my phone and pick it up to look at the text, right? Um,
Yeah. Yeah. We're not actually talking about just unconscious processes in general. For instance, driving is a whole series of unconscious processes, right? Like putting your foot on an accelerator, putting your foot on a brake, shifting, using your left foot to get to the clutch. Things those are those are unconscious processes, but they're not automatic. They're not habits, and there may be some routine aspect to it, but I would argue that there's a difference between driving is not a habit, that driving is a whole series of unconscious processes, but I would argue that it's not a habit.
I might disagree with you there. I think there are aspects of it that are habitual in the way that we do, and I think there's also the habitual part of, if you take a certain route to work. We've talked about this before. Many people have talked about this. Is that a habit? This idea that I don't have to think about my route to work anymore. I do it at a automatic level, and I may not even remember, like, what I was doing, if I'm because my mind can be elsewhere, and I don't have to worry about, oh, I'm going up to Highway 100 and I'm taking a left and I'm then going off on 96th Road to get to whatever the next road is. I just know, and I do it without really consciously thinking. Whereas the first time, back in the day when you and I, before we had GPS and just could listen to the GPS and like subconsciously,
Right.
not consciously think about it,
Right.
we had to think about, all right, map it out prior and do this planning. So, but I do think that some of the things of like how you brake and steer and different things, those are, again, are they more automatic? Are they habit? This is probably we're getting too nuanced at this level, but it's interesting, right? So
We might be getting a bit nuanced, but we are talking about habits, and yet we said that at the beginning of this episode we're going to talk about habits and routines and rituals.
oh yes.
But we haven't talked about routines. Are routines different?
So this is, again, if you remember the very first behavioral grooves meetup, right, which predated the podcast. We talked
Yes.
about this. This was
Yeah.
part of the conversation. I got up in front and I drew this whole little wonderful chart on a board and said, look, habits over here are more automatic, but routines are on the same continuum. They just have more of a conscious element to them. And it is a continuum. So it's really, I don't know how many habits we have that are fully automatic. I mean, there's many of them, but there are some where there's some level of conscious piece. And then at some point, you flip over, like when does red become orange and orange become, I don't know, what is the next color on the
You
wheel
just add more
continuum.
yellow, and then red becomes
Yeah, but
orange.
when, how much yellow be turned, and if you look at like where is that degree, it's this continuum of things from a routine. So I think the difference, as we define it, and I think as researchers define it, which is, again, lots of debate out there on this, but uh, again, a routine involves a sequence of actions or behaviors that are performed regularly, but with a higher degree of conscious planning and control. So they can be triggered by a cue, but we don't automatically. So I hear a ding, and then I have to think to myself, "Oh, that's a text. Oh, am I waiting for an important text? Oh, maybe I should look at it. Am I not looking? I don't need to look at it right now." But I don't just automatically reach for the phone. I consciously go, yeah, I want to see what that text is, and I will reach for the phone and pick it up. So that's the difference. And I think it's hard because it is a continuum, in my opinion, to determine, like, how do you know when one becomes the other. And I also have a maybe different view on this, is that I think habits and routines, we can switch between them. Is that sometimes things become more habitual, and then for whatever reason we fall out of them and they become more routine, and routines obviously are, at the beginning, or anytime we start a habit, they're almost always routines because we have to have that conscious part to build that repetition so they become automatic. So there's a free flow between them in my mind.
Well, now that you've expressed your opinion, now let's actually get to the facts, Kurt. No, I'm just giving you shit. On an academic level, it's important for us to differentiate. And I
Yeah.
think that it is important for us to look at those differently. Wendy Wood has also argued that the vernacular is so similar that especially in common culture, that it's okay for us to sort of switch between habits and routines, the terminology.
Yeah.
That said, I think that you've pointed out something really important here, and that there are certainly nuances that are worth being aware of.
Yeah. The key difference, it lies in that level of automaticity, right?
Okay.
That habits are ingrained. They don't have that conscious thought. Routines require at least a modem of conscious thought. And it's like how much of that modem makes it a routine versus a habit. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I also mentioned rituals.
I like how you're saying very quietly.
We got introduced to rituals in a kind of a big way with Mike Norton recently.
Yeah.
What makes a ritual different from a habit or a routine?
So unlike habits and routines, which are oftentimes perform for their utility and efficiency, rituals take on a sense of purpose, uh, a larger meaning. Uh, they're more about the emotional element that goes with it. So they can be a habit. Mike Norton talks
Mm-hmm.
about this person who every morning he went down and brewed the perfect coffee for him and his spouse, and
Yeah.
it was a ritual. He was doing this, it was a routine, it was an automatic piece, but he put a level of emotion or purpose into this
Yeah.
that then was part of that. Now his spouse, who just got the cup of coffee, it was
Right.
more of a routine and didn't necessarily have the same element of meaning associated with it.
Yeah, intentionality and symbolic significance are really key parts, additional key parts of what makes a ritual different from a routine or a habit. And I think that they're different enough because, and by the way, a ritual can be fast. It doesn't have to be,
Yes.
slow. It can be slow, but it could also be very, very quick if you wanted it to. And I think that we might end up touching on rituals as we go through this even more. But it's a significantly different experience. A ritual is a significantly different experience because of its intentionality and symbolic significance.
Right. And as such, they can bring comfort, and they can slow us down in our often hectic days, even if it is, like you said, short. It doesn't need to be long. I mean, we're slowing down from a sense of paying attention and being aware and being present in the moment,
Right.
which
Right.
habits often take us out of the present moment. They allow us to be doing something, and our minds can be elsewhere. Um,
Well, let's
that's
actually talk
yeah.
about that. What's the benefit of having a habit? What do we get from habits? What are some of the things that we could use habits for that could help our lives be better? Hopefully, we're not using habits for bad things. I
Well,
mean,
we could
it
be,
does
but
it certainly
that's
happens,
yeah. I mean,
but we want to use
we could be
habits
evil geniuses who are bringing habits into our world to rule the world. How about that?
if
No, no. So,
if
even
only.
before we get to that, Tim, I think it's really important to point out that habits can be formed intentionally or haphazardly. In other words,
Yes.
we get many of
Mhm.
the I don't pick up my phone when it dings because I've consciously thought, oh, this is going to be great. I am going to, every time my phone dings, I'm going to pick it up to look to see that damn notification from a text. No, that is a habit that was formed haphazardly, and because it is a behavior, uh, and there's a cue and there's a repetition, and I get some sort of reward that reinforces it, it has been part of what happens in this. And so I think that habits, we use them, um, we can be using them purposely in a more uh, intentional way. And we'll talk about getting rid of habits, and particularly some of those negative habits that we have, in the next episode. But for this one, let's just keep talking about, some of the reasons that we might want to implement a habit. So, Tim, what would you think are, like, just one reason why we might want to implement a
The
habit?
first thing that comes to mind is consistency. We as humans value consistency in each other. We like consistency in ourselves. We like the image of being consistent, and habits actually help us be consistent, right?
Yeah.
That consistency is a really, really good thing. We like being able to get up and say, I did this all the time. This is my habit to go and do this, to say this, to speak this way, to listen, to do all the things that can become habitual.
I think that consistency also is a useful tool oftentimes we require to do things consistently in order to achieve our goals. So
Right.
if I have
Right.
a goal of getting more fit, it's hard to do that haphazardly. I can't just go exercise one
Yeah.
time and then, eat healthy one meal and then multitude of other meals not, and different, so I need to have that habit
Right.
or that routine, that I am consistently working out or going to the gym, that I am consistently eating healthy and not eating poorly, that I am consistently doing things. For myself, I mean, one of the habits that I have developed is my flossing my teeth, right? And it started out as a routine. And even now, I wonder sometimes it flexes between that habit and routine, right? Traveling or not a normal day or different things. It's not necessarily just something that happens. I need to actually think about it. And oftentimes I actually lay in bed and I go, oh crap, I didn't floss my teeth. I didn't do my night routine. So then I get up and I go and do it, right? So
Wow.
um,
Wow.
but there's that. I think Katie Milkman talks about habits as being brittle, and so
Yeah. Yeah.
disruptions matter. Um, and again, this gets into more into like how to start these and various different things. But again, that consistency is what we're searching for to help us achieve goals of, hey, I wanted to have healthier teeth. And by the way, folks, as I've started this ritual, which I have tracked and done, and I have not missed flossing my teeth for. Well, I take that back. I missed it one time when I had my surgery. I was in the
If
hospital that night and did not do it, but one time
okay.
in 3 years. So there you go. And I
So
don't have any cavities. There you go. See.
okay. And so that gets to, one of the consistency things is streaks, is to be able to speak to the fact that you've done it, you've measured it, you actually have a demonstration of that. Duolingo is great at supporting streaks and measuring. I can't tell you the number of friends that I have who are learning how to speak a new language, and their streak, the game mechanics that Duolingo uses to support that streak are fantastic. They
Yeah.
care. Every time I talk to them, they're like, I just got to presidential level. I just got to embassy level. I just got to starship level. I don't know what the levels are, but my God, they can't stop talking about what level their streak is at.
So I think we're getting into like how do we, what are the mechanics around this? I think one of the other reasons why we use habits and why habits form is actually because they reduce our cognitive load, right?
Yes.
Our brains, as we've talked about multiple times on the show, are huge, big energy sucking machines, right? I mean, a couple percentage points of our overall weight, but take like 20% plus of our energy consumption. And so we try to do anything that can reduce that load. Thus, that's why habits and oftentimes those unintentional habits form, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Anything else that we want to say on that?
So
On
on cognitive load, I don't think so. I think there is another piece that I think is important, and this is less about habits and more about rituals. Is building rituals,
yeah.
rituals into our lives, because I think they add a level of comfort for us, but they also can help us savor the mundane, those moments of making that coffee in the morning, uh, the bedtime tuck in that you do with your kids, the evening goodnight kiss that you do with your spouse. All of those can be turned into rituals as opposed to habits or routines or just things that you do or maybe not do on a regular basis. And it embeds them with meaning, and it creates this aspect that really helps appreciate life and gives you gratitude and helps you, in my opinion, find your groove.
Rituals can be very good at helping you find a groove. And And I also want to just reinforce this idea that habits and routines can be really beneficial in helping you find your groove too. Because when we reduce cognitive load, when we have this consistency, those are reinforcing self-supporting tools that we have on a cognitive basis. Now, let's move to starting a new habit or routine. How do we get started? Because a lot of us have goals and interests and things that we'd like to do. Maybe it has to do with eating healthier or exercising more, or there's all those kinds of health things. But what about, hey, I'd like to just read more consistently, or I want to focus my attention as we're getting into the election cycle on things that aren't going to draw me down the rabbit hole of disinformation, especially. Yeah. So how do we start a habit? What's the first thing that we should do?
So first is understand that we're doing behavior change, and behavior change is hard, right? So this idea of identifying what is the behavior, the response that we want to do, that we want to change. Yeah. And I would point to the researchers that have talked about this, that like BJ Fogg, who wrote the book Tiny Habits, James Clear, who wrote Atomic Habits, even smaller, right? You got tiny, then you go to atomic. It's like in Spinal Tap, going to 11 because it's one louder, except for it's the other way around, right? It's the reverse thing.
Yes, it is.
It is. Atomic Habits. It's one less than Tiny Habits.
It's smaller than molecular habits. It's smaller than DNA habits. Yeah.
But is it the same as quark habits? I don't know. Or exactly. Nuance habits. I think there you go. We can go one lower even. Anyway, sorry, James Clear and BJ Fogg about that. But start small, right? So this idea of identify what the behavior is, but then don't try to just change your life in like, all right, I'm going to do 100 push-ups every day. No. Start small. As BJ Fogg would say, start with one. I did this actually with my floss, right? And I still to this day, my streak is I have to floss one tooth. So I get to check off my marker if I floss one tooth. Now, the reality is I never just floss one tooth. I got the floss out. Exactly. I put it around my fingers. I'm putting it in my mouth. I might as well go for 2. Well, hell, I might as well go for 3, 4, 5. All of a sudden it's like 28. There you go. So that's but you can start small. So that's it. What's next, Tim? What do we need to do after that?
Well, I think rather than jumping to the reward, I think it's good to actually start with the cue next. Like, what's going to get us there? What is going to be the thing that when that thing happens, our new habit is going to start? And actually, in this regard, Charles Duhigg suggests actually using a current cue and repurposing it. And I think that probably he's lifting from BJ Fogg's development of. I always love the story of BJ Fogg saying when he wanted to start doing push-ups, he tied it to going to the bathroom. And so every time he went to the bathroom, he did one push-up, just one. Yeah. Just one single push-up.
Small, right? Yeah.
He started small, but it was the linkage was if something was going to happen anyway, he's going to go to the bathroom. But it was like, okay, I'm going to go, but I have to do one push-up. And so there was this existing and current cue, and he repurposed it for the sake of creating this new habit. And I think that there's something really wonderful about that. And I haven't used the bathroom thing, but I've used that model in my own life.
No, and I think that's a really important piece there is what is that cue? The cue can be as simple as time of day. You can set a reminder for yourself. Right. It can be an emotional state. It can be when I feel X, that means I should do Y. And I think one of the things about a cue is identifying it, is actually writing yourself an if then statement, right? To
Uh-huh.
solidify this for this habit that you're trying to create, is to, if or when, right? Maybe it's a when then statement.
Could
When
be that.
blank, then I will do X, right?
Mhm.
And by doing that, I think it's there. You talked about moving, identifying the cue and then thinking about the behavior. I think behavior is really important though, as well as, is what's the reward that you're going to get? What is going to be that motivation to do this? And oftentimes those rewards are intrinsic in nature, that they
Mhm.
are a feeling in alignment with who I want to be, or the self identity that I have. That's very important. And so sometimes it's not necessarily like I am getting something tangible out of doing this. It is the type of person that I want to be, and that feels good for us. I mean, alignment with values that I hold, various different things. And so you get a dopamine release from that. So there are those factors. But Katie Milkman brings up a really interesting piece when she talks about temptation bundling, this idea of bundling the reward that might be more of a tangible reward. She talks about listening to a book on tape, but keeping that at the gym. So the only time
Right.
that she can listen to this book or watch this series on television or whatever, read this certain book, whatever it would be, if she goes to the gym. And so you're bundling that reward with the habit, the routine.
A key part of this is because uh, if the reward is too far down the line, like I'm going to live a better life or I'm going to lose 20 pounds or something, it's going to take some time to get there. So, kind of getting back to Duhigg's emphasis on reward, having a short term reward every time you do that habit is a really good thing to help get that new habit going, to have some kind of reward that I did it. And I did this. I did the thing that I said I was going to do. It's the habit that I want to start. And so I'm going to get a reward for just doing it even one time or two times or three times.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You brought up a great thing about Weight Watchers. You want to talk about that in our
They,
pre-discussion on here?
they used to, Weight Watchers was really clear about making sure that the rewards that you have for yourself are appropriate for what you're doing. So an example of an inappropriate reward would be, say you're trying to lose weight and you take 5 pounds off and you go, great, I'm going to celebrate, but I'm not going to have a big slice of cake or a big thing
Why?
of
I want a
ice.
big
All
slice.
right.
I lost 5 pounds. I should definitely have a big slice of cake or a big bowl of ice cream for me, right?
Not right. So be intentional in all of this. Intentionality is such an important part of it, but be thoughtful,
Yeah.
right? Don't give yourself the wrong rewards. That's the short story.
Another way of to start and to keep a habit is, we talked about the streaks, various different things, but is to track your progress, right? Streaks
Yeah.
matter, as you've talked about already. This idea that we should be consistent. So again, there's research that points to being consistent with the time, date, hour of doing something. Make sure that you are
Mhm.
doing it on a very regular basis and track that, right?
And all you need to do is 21 days, right? And then bada bing, you got a new habit, right, Kurt?
No, no, Tim. That is a false myth that has been out there for Lord knows how. Actually, that was interesting how that started. It was a
Yeah.
whole study of like somebody doing facial reconstruction surgery, and when they looked in the mirror, they no longer were like, "Who is that?" It was an average of 21 days, and somehow that
Yeah.
got translated into.
Completely disconnected. Yeah.
Yeah, but this idea that there is a specific amount of time that it takes you. If I just do this for 21 days, I am going to then have a habit form. No, it's very dependent. It's dependent upon your personality. It's dependent upon
It is of what
how
you're doing, how different it is.
how
Yeah.
different it is. Is it something that fits really easy into my already established habits and various different things? I'm just adding something on. So mouthwash after my, flossing and brushing my teeth, or taking my medicines, which actually I have added in because I, have added in my medication at night afterwards. Real simple, happened right away. Very long. you know, Going to the gym on a regular basis is a much bigger change. And so
Right.
doesn't necessarily happen. I mean, the amount of time it takes to form a habit. And again, sometimes some things may never become that automatic, and they are always going to be a routine. And so, understand that as you're going into this. So,
Yeah. When you have troubles, and by the way, you brought up something I want to reinforce first, and that is same time of day, same day of the week. That kind of consistency can add to the speed at which you acquire that new habit. So if you're going to go running and you say I want to run uh, 5 of the next 5 days. If you're doing it at the same time of day, it will be easier for you to get into that habit than it will be if you run one day at 7 a.m., the next day at 3 p.m., the next day at 7 p.m.
whenever I can get out, this
That
specific,
yeah, that
I'll do it. Maybe I'll do it after work. Maybe if I'm feeling good, I'll do it at lunchtime. No, set a time, right?
right.
That's usually better.
And if you're having trouble with that, use calendar blocking. These are and reminders. Like you and I are huge fans of these tools to just say, I'm just going to block time on my calendar. This is when I'm going to do that routine, that habit that I want to become habitual. And this is the time of day when I want to do it. So I'm going to block time on my calendar to actually say, this is my time.
Yes, and we tend to think about calendars as, many of us, not everybody, as like during our workday. You can use calendars into the evening and on weekends and various different pieces.
That's right.
They're not limited. There
That's
are
right.
24 hours in a day and 7 days in a week. One thing, and this comes back to the research too. You talked about how that 7 a.m. running time every day helps you start building that habit. There is, though, an element of giving yourself some grace that will help you
Yeah.
maintain that
Yeah.
habit, because you know what? Stuff happens, and I might not make that 7 a.m. And we don't want to fall in is what the hell effect, which is basically, okay,
Yep.
I was on this diet. There was this wonderful piece of cake in the break room because somebody had a birthday today, and I had a big piece of it. So I'm off of my calories for the day. So what the hell? I'm going to just go and eat a whole bunch more. And then you really go down that hole. I find myself doing that very often. So there's an element of giving yourself some grace. And there's really good research that, in a diet, give yourself a cheat day, right? Weight Watchers even has extra bonus points that you can use at,
That's
every
right.
day I get 25 points, but I also got a flex number of points every week that I get to use. So I can have that piece of cake and not feel guilty about it. Or, you can go, all right, I'm going to, run 5 days a week. But if I have a minimum of 4 or 3, so I can miss 1 or 2,
Yeah.
or I have 3 skip days a month, and I can use that. Those are really powerful because all of a sudden you're not saying, "Hey, I missed something, therefore it's all ruined. My streak is gone." No, you're still doing what you need to do.
That's the big thing, is that in our minds it's so easy to say, well, I missed it, I failed, I'm done.
Yeah.
And that's a bad place to go.
The other piece that I think we can talk about is, as what I mentioned at the start of this section, right? Is that habits are behaviors, and we're trying to instill a behavior change into
Yeah.
our lives. And so we can use some of the behavioral science that we know, like COM-B or EAST, to help
Yeah.
set us up for success. So I don't know. What do you think about that?
Kurt, I couldn't agree more. And we're both fans of East as a model that was developed by BIT. I think that was a U.S. BIT North America thing.
And
But
EAST stands for what?
easy, attractive, social, and timely.
Yes.
So
So if you
that's
make
a
your habit easy,
easy,
attractable, social.
attract, social, and timely.
And
Yeah.
we didn't talk about social, but social is another piece of this. Is oftentimes there's real good value in doing starting a habit if you can, particularly like if it's a workout habit or whatever. Do it with a partner, um,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
join a spin club, or do something where there are other people that are around that. But we digress. Go back to
Absolutely.
Com B.
The Yeah, COM-B COM-B stands for capability, O for opportunity, M for motivation, and then that equals behavior, the B part. So capability, opportunity plus motivation equals behavior. And the thing that I really like about COM-B as a model is that it takes the pressure off of motivation and willpower.
Mm.
It pulls your foot off the gas to say, if God bless, if I'm failing because I don't have the willpower or the motivation. COM-B allows you to look at whatever habit you're trying to establish and say, maybe there's a capability issue. Maybe I don't have the intellectual or physical capability to get this done, or the opportunity that I might not have the social opportunity right now. I don't have the support from my social norms to get this done. So it's not just about motivation. I want to, but there are other headwinds that I have in my life that are either in the form of a capability or an opportunity that could be preventing me from getting this new habit started.
Which gets to understanding that, and you might have to do some other things in preparation for the behavior change that you're trying. You might need to
Oh, well said.
upload your skills. You might need to re assess kind of your schedule and various different things, and rearrange some things in order to make things happen. So you have the opportunity. One of the things that I always talk, and again going back to East, is like ease, right? The easy part of this. And it also gets to the motivation part. I've heard the story and I've told it over. There was a person who was trying to learn guitar. So he set up this idea. Well, I will just practice guitar when I get home from work. I'll spend an hour practicing my guitar. Here's what happens though. The guy came home from work. He's tired. It's been a long day. I had to work an extra hour. Oh,
Right.
traffic was bad getting home. So what's the first thing you do? You go and you I walk through the door. I go sit on the couch. Okay. What's in front of me on the couch? Oh, the remote. I turn on the television. What happens? I get sucked into watching some television show, and all of a sudden a couple hours pass by. Now I'm hungry. I got to go make dinner. I go make dinner, and now I got to clean up. I clean up, and now I'm really tired. Oh, I never got to practice my guitar. What this person supposedly did, if this is a true story, is realize that, all right, let's set up the cue is like the trigger is coming home and sitting on the couch. So they moved the television into the back bedroom and instead brought their guitar out and put the guitar next to the couch. So I'm tired. I come home from work, sit on the couch, I reach for there's no remote, there's no TV. Oh, I can reach for my guitar. Thus you start doing that. Again, it's like my Oreo thing. He still had the television, could still go if he wanted to watch a show and be
Yep.
conscious of it. I am purposely going to do this. Then that's
Right.
fine. I can go into the back bedroom or the back den or wherever that is, and I can do that. But this unconscious automatic part now can be that cue is redirected to guitar playing. And I love that idea. So
It's fantastic, especially because it's about guitar playing. I think.
of course you would love it. I knew. Maybe you told me that story. Yeah. So this is part one, folks, of our habits and routines and
Rituals.
as we go. Why do we do that? That sounds really creepy.
I don't know.
It's creepy. All right, we're not doing that anymore. So hopefully you got some insight from it. Hopefully there's something you can take or share it with somebody who might find this valuable or interesting. And stay tuned because we have a part two.
Yeah, part two. In the next episode, we're actually going to cover more about what makes habits work and also talk about how to end those nasty habits that are kind of getting in our way, basically, that we don't want to continue. because that
Hate those
happens too.
nasty habits. Hate those nasty, nasty habits. That's my
I hate
best
you, Uncle
Gollum,
Jamie.
my Gollum, my best Gollum kind of thing. Nasty habits. Oh.
And, you know what, Kurt, you mentioned it's important to share this with people. Share it with just the groovy people. Like, this is
Oh
behavioral
yeah.
grooves. We got good grooves. So share it with just the people in your life that are just cool enough. I just want to say that. I don't know if it matters, but
Okay, so if somebody shared this episode with you, know that you're groovy. There you go. And with that, folks, just go out, make some habits or routines or rituals in your life that will help you find your groove.